Hey everybody, if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you are new to Xactimate. My name is Adam Gardner and I'm with Adjuster Pro. And what we're doing here is we are jumping into Xactimate and taking a look at its core function. So we're going to be doing an exercise together. I'm going to be demonstrating on the screen and you're going to be following along in your own Xactimate. And what we're going to be looking at is the basic two-step process at the heart of Xactimate. And the process is basically creating two or three-dimensional space and then finding stuff that goes on or in it. It's a basic two-step process at the core of Xactimate. Now we've got details before and after that two-step process, so we're going to come back later and backfill some of these areas. But for right now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to open Xactimate and you're going to get to the control center. See, you've got 4 tabs across the top. Xactimate Control Center, Projects, and Price List. So we're going to bypass some of the preliminary steps that you do need to do before you can actually create a project. And we're going to go right to the heart of Xactimate just to understand it. Then we'll come back again and backfill that. So we're at the Control Center, and you see you've got 3 sub-menus here. We're going to be at the dashboard, and we're going to be adding a new project. But first we're going to give it a name. Now the company you end up working for is going to tell you how they want their projects named. For this practice, we're simply going to be naming the project according to the last name and then the first name of the policyholder, the insured, just for practice. So this guy's name is going to be Smith, and then I'm just going to do a dash and then Bob. Now, before you add a new project, make sure you're adding an estimate, not a residential valuation. And make sure it's under carrier and not contractor. We'll explain that stuff later. So we're going to be adding, we've typed in the name Bob-Smith, or excuse me, Smith-Bob, and we're going to be adding a new project and it's carrier. And when we've done that, we're going to click on Add New Project. So go ahead and do that and go there with me. I'll give you a second. And once you're there, this is going to be the first screen you're going to see is going to allow you to enter in all the claimant's information, but we're going to skip ahead of that for right now for this exercise, and we're going right over to Sketch. So you'll see that we've got tabs across the top. You've landed here in Claim Info, but we're going to jump over to Sketch. Okay? Now when you get to Sketch, because we didn't do some of the steps that precede this one, you're going to get a pop-up saying, hey, you need a price list. And we'll go into more detail later, but for right now you're going to select Training Price List, assuming you're in a demo, and OK. Okay? And that's what you'll need there. Okay? You'll see that you'll confirm that you have in fact done that over to the left on this column. So where we're at here is the sketch palette, and this big white area is the palette. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little more room for right now, and I'm going to move my pointer down here to where I can scoot this area down and scoot this field over also. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on the first of that two-step process, actually taking space and putting it there for us to manipulate. So let's assume that you've been to a house and you have measured an interior room that has some damage and you're actually going to be recreating that room here in Xactimate. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to drop a room from the Room tool onto the palette. So if you have clicked on, and if you do not see the tools, the tool menu here, you'll want to click on this Tool tab, because where we're going is over to Room. And you'll see when I hover my pointer over it, I get a hint as to what the shortcut is and what the tool is for. So if I hover over, for instance, the Deck tool, you'll see that holding down the Shift key and the D will give us a deck on Room. Just simply hitting R on the keyboard will get us a room. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the tool, not the shortcut. So this is not a drag and drop, meaning I do not left click and hold down my left click and move it over to the palette. I simply click on this Room tool and then move my pointer over to the pallet and then do another click, and I've placed a room on the pallet. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. Okay, see this little undo tool here right there, so that I can show it to you again. I'm hovering over room, click, click, and I've placed a room on the pallet. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to get to this point where you've got a room on the pallet. So go ahead and do that now. Now, you'll notice, let me zoom in a tad here so you can see this room better in the video. See these zoom tools, these view tools down here at the bottom right? The one with the plus sign is zoom in. I'm going to click that a couple of times so you can get a better view of this room. You'll see that it's a 12 foot by 12 foot room on the interior and 12.8 by 12.8, that is 12 foot 8 inches on the exterior, and that's because the default setting in Xactimate gives you a 4-inch thick wall. There's ways to change that and reasons to change that, but we're not going to be dealing with that kind of thing at this level of Xactimate knowledge. So right now just note that in this program in general, in these exercises, a 12 by 12, this would be considered a 12 by 12 room. We're actually naming it according to the interior measurements. So hearkening back to our inspection of Bob Smith's house, let's suppose that this room was a dining room and that it was 13 foot 4 inches by 16 foot 8 inches. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to name this room by clicking on it, and so I'm going to start typing in dining, and you'll see that it autofills it. Just enter that. See, so what I did is I clicked on the room, I clicked on the name, I started typing, and then I just hit the enter key on my keyboard. And I've renamed this room the dining room. So go ahead and do that. Now this dining room was 13.4 by 16.8. Now how we change that size are with these handles. These squares, these white squares, the center of each wall are called handles. Now, if I were to move this handle right here, it would change this measurement right here, because when you move, in order to change measurements here, you actually have to move the bordering walls. That'll make sense in a second. So I'm going to take this handle, hold down my left click, and I'm going to move it out till I get to 13 foot 4. See that? 13.4. See that right there? And then I quit moving it. Now, if I want to change this measurement right here, this 12 foot measurement, I'm going to have to move this handle here or this handle here on top to the north. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this one. Hold down my left click. I'm going to move it out to 16.8. See that? And then just do a single left click anywhere. Now I'm going to adjust my zoom a little bit. So you see I've made a room that is 13.4 by 16.8, the dining room. Okay. Just to quickly show you what I've done and how it looks in 3 dimensions to give you an idea of the significance of what I've created, at the bottom right of the palette is a small icon that looks like a blue cube. It's called the 3D view. Now when I click on that and then take my pointer, go to the palette, hold down my left click, and then move my pointer around, you can see that I have a rectangular 3-dimensional shape here. It has height, it has width, it has length. So the significance of this, and by the way, to get from the 3-dimensional view to the regular plan view, I'm simply, I can either hit the 1 key on my keyboard, that's the shortcut, or I can hit this tool over here, plan view. So go ahead, and if you've gone to 3-dimensional view, you'll want to get back to the plan view. All right. So the significance is that now if I want to, say, place paint on the walls or carpet on the floors, I'm not going to need to actually take out a calculator and do any measurements. I measured the original room, the length, the width, and the height, Now all I need to do is put it in Xactimate and it knows all those measurements. Okay. So, oh, and by the way, unless you change it, the default ceiling height is 8 feet. And we'll talk about that later in these lessons. But for right now, I've got a 13'4" by 16'8" dining room with an 8-foot high wall, or in other words, the ceiling is 8 feet high. Okay, so now we've created space. That's the first step in the two-step process. So what I want you to do is, if you need to, go ahead and pause this video, because I want you to recreate this room exactly. You're creating a 13'4" by 16'8" dining room, and then we're going to move on to step 2, which is where we're actually going to find some things and put things in it. So go ahead and pause the video if you need to. Okay, so you've got the room built. Now there's more than one way to do step 2, which is to find the stuff to put on or in this room. But I'm going to show you the way that a lot of companies out there want you to do it. So right now you see we're on the Sketch tab right here to create that room. We're going to move over to the Estimate Items tab. You don't need to save anything, you don't need to exit. You simply click on Estimate Items. Now, once you get there, this is where a lot of adjusters do most of their work. Some folks, well, we'll get to that later. This is where you're going to do step 2. Now you'll see you have Bob, or Smith-Bob. That's the folder that you made when you created this project. You're also going to see it represented at the very top left. You've got main level, and you've got that because you created something in Sketch, and the default level in Sketch is main level. And then you've got dining room, which you created on the main level. Okay, so if you're wanting to put something in the dining room, like paint, you're going to want to actually have the dining room highlighted. See that? See how it's highlighted? Now, let's suppose, for the sake of this first exercise we're doing here, that what we want to do is we want to put drywall on the wall surfaces. Okay? So what I'm going to do, and let's suppose we want to do 1/2" drywall. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the search field, and I'm going to type in drywall, and I'm going to do 1/2. Now you'll see there are different things that I could do. There are different drywall items that I could actually add to this project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click search. Okay. And I'm looking for, in this list that it gives me, I'm looking for 1/2" drywall. Here it is. Scrolling down to 1/2" drywall, hung, tape, floated, ready for paint. Now take a look at these items here. You'll see that I've got 1/2" drywall, hung, tape, floated, ready for paint, and that has a code of DRY 1/2. I've also got a code DRY 1/2 with a minus sign, and that is the symbol for the code for 1/2" drywall, hung, taped, and ready for texture. So there's less work that has gone into that. You can see that the DRY 1/2 is $1.84 a square foot, where the DRY 1/2 minus sign is $1.64 a square foot. It's less. And so it goes. There's a DRY 1/2 with the plus sign. There's 2 plus signs. But right now, I just want 1/2" drywall, hung, tape, flooded, ready for paint. DRY 1/2. Okay. So I double click on that, and it places it in the dining room. You can see that dining room now has a price next to it. But what I want to do is I want to spend a few minutes looking at what that does. So if you look down here in what's called the quick entry area, okay, see that? you're going to see that the DRY 1/2 was put in here as a category and as a selector, cat and SEL. Once I have a category and a selector, I've got an item in the room, as it were. Now, I just want to analyze each of these fields quickly. So I'm assuming that you actually have done this with me, so pause the video if you haven't, because what you're going to want to do is find 1/2 inch drywall, hung, tape, flooded, ready for paint, and you want to actually enter it into the quick entry. And one way to do that, the way I suggest, is by double clicking it up here in the price list. Puts it down here. Okay, so pause the video if you need to. Now what we've got is category, DRY, and selector 1/2. The next thing I want to talk about is the ACT, ACT, the activity. And the way we're going to learn about this is we're going to click on this drop down here, and you'll see that there are a number of different activities. There's a plus sign, a minus sign, an ampersand, that's the and symbol, an M and an I. Now, I is just, if you choose I, that's the labor to install drywall only. If you choose M, that's the material only. If you choose the minus sign, remove, that's just the demolition, the cost to actually tear out the drywall. And if you choose the and symbol, that's the demolition and the installation. That includes material and labor. Now the plus sign in this instance is simply it is the material and the labor to put it in, and does not include any demolition. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume in this particular scenario that there's been some type of damage, say water damage, to this drywall, and so we actually want to pay to remove and replace it. So the ampersand, the one that was already in there by default, is the correct setting. Okay. Now, if you're uncertain that this particular line item, this 1/2 inch drywall, hung, tape, flooded, ready for paint, which has the code of DRY 1/2, if you're uncertain if it has everything you need or if it maybe has more than you need, the way to check that is to click on this picture. See how it says click for detail? Okay. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to allow me to actually read through and see what is included in this item. So in this case, it includes drywall, metal corner bead, compound or mud, nails, tape, screws, installation labor, and the labor cost to remove 1/2 inch drywall. It includes, it tells you what type of drywall and gives you a bunch of details. So this is, as you're beginning to learn Xactimate, this is where you're going to go to check if you've got the right items and if you've got everything that needs to be included. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. So take a look at that, familiarize yourself with that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is this field called Calc. See how it says WC in it? In order to understand what WC means, the easiest way is to click on Open Calculator. It's this little icon, looks like a calculator. And when you hover over these different things, it'll tell you what they each mean. For instance, C means the square footage of the ceiling. W means the square footage of the wall. WC is the square footage of the walls and the ceiling. You'll note that by default, the calculator or the calculation was WC. So Xactimate, because it doesn't know what you're trying to do, it just assumes you want to put drywall on the walls and the ceilings. But not for this exercise. In this particular exercise, all you want to do is put drywall on the wall surface. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this, and you'll note that right here where it says WC, I'm actually going to hit the delete key. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to put just W in the calculator. Okay. All right. Now, for this exercise right now, this is all we need to do. We've got DRY 1/2, and it's being removed and replaced, right, on the wall surface. So that's 480 square feet. Don't mess with the square footage here. At $1.84. And you see this stuff here: coverage, depreciation, age, forget about that for right now. We're going to have a lesson in the not too distant future where we're going to be showing you about that. But for right now, this is all you need to do to complete the simple two-step process that's at the heart of Xactimate. But it's not done yet. In order to complete it, I have to click this button right here, OK. Okay? So once I do that, I have added 1/2 inch drywall to the wall surfaces of the room that I created. And that's the first exercise. So let me explain it once more for your practice. If I go back over to the Sketch tab here, I have created a 13.4 by 16.8 room with an 8-foot high default height of a ceiling. I've named it Dining Room. You're going to be doing that too. And then you're going to go over to Estimate Items. You're going to find 1/2 inch drywall, hung, tape, flooded, ready for paint, using the search feature up here. You're going to double click on it, and you're going to place it on the wall surface only. So you've got W in the calculator, you've got the ampersand here in activity, and then you press OK. And what you've done is you've just created, virtual space, you've recreated Bob Smith's dining room in Xactimate with a length, a width, and a height. And then you found what's called a line item, in this case 1/2 inch drywall, and you've applied it to that surface. So what Xactimate's going to do is it's going to calculate all the costs associated with painting that wall surface. Now the last thing I'm going to do, because I want to encourage you to get into this habit, is I'm going to show you what you've just done in a printed form, because this is how the file review person that you're going to be submitting this to, this is going to be how they're going to be looking at it. So I'm going to direct your attention to the top right where it says print, and we're going to click on print. Okay, and there's all sorts of settings here we'll need to deal with, but for right now I just want you to view what you've done. So I'm going to ask you to click on, in this Estimate Reports window at the bottom left, there's a button that says View. You're going to click on that, and it's going to generate a preview of what the printed estimate will look like. Now, I want to zoom in on it, the tab, a little bit with this zoom in arrow. Okay, and I'm going to go down to the second page, because here I am. You'll see I've got a dining room, right, with an 8-foot high, with an 8-foot height, and it's got 1/2 inch drywall, hung, tape, flooded, ready for paint. It's got the quantity, the unit price, and the total dollar amount there. And here's a description of all the areas for that room. Okay, so I'm going to hit the Escape key at the top left of my keyboard to get out of this view, and I'm going to hit the Escape key again to get out of this Estimate Reports pop-up. And that concludes the very first exercise or exploration into the two-step process of creating space and putting stuff on it in Xactimate. Thank you.